Have you ever looked at those old star-shaped forts and wondered why we stopped building them? You know, the ones with the pointy corners, looking like something out of a fantasy map. Well, the truth is, they became obsolete. And today, we're going to dive into how the art of smashing down walls forced the art of building them to get a whole lot smarter. Welcome to the age of the polygonal fortress. Back in the day, the star fortress, or trace Italian, was the king of defense. Its angled bastions were designed to create deadly crossfires, mowing down any attacker who dared to get close. For a long time, it worked. But then, a French military genius named the Marquis de Vauban came along and basically wrote the playbook on how to crack these fortresses like a nutshell. Vauban perfected a method of siegecraft that was slow, methodical, but almost unstoppable. Instead of a mad dash to the walls, his armies would dig. They'd start far away, digging a trench parallel to the fortress walls. Then, they'd dig another zigzagging trench, called a sap, forward, and then another parallel trench, getting closer and closer. It was like an unstoppable, earthy serpent inching its way towards the defender's throat. With each new trench, they'd build artillery batteries. This creeping barrage allowed them to systematically dismantle the fortress's defenses piece by piece. They'd silence the cannons on one bastion, then focus on the one next to it. The star fort's design, once its strength, now had a critical weakness. The angled bastions that created such great crossfire also created blind spots, or dead ground, where attackers could shelter from cannon fire while they dug their saps ever closer. Vauban's method exploited this ruthlessly. Sieges that once took months or even years could now be wrapped up in a matter of weeks. So, military engineers had to go back to the drawing board. If the offense has a new playbook, the defense needs one too. The answer wasn't to make the stars pointier or the walls thicker. The answer was to change the shape entirely. Enter the polygonal fortress. Forget the fancy, intricate star shape. The polygonal fort is, as the name suggests, a simple polygon, a hexagon, an octagon, whatever fit the terrain. It looks much simpler, almost a step backward, but don't let its looks fool you. Its genius was in its efficiency and how it solved the problems the star fort couldn't. Instead of relying on projecting bastions for flanking fire, the polygonal system used something different. The main wall, or enceinte, was a straight line between two corners of the polygon. This made it much easier to build and much harder for enemy artillery to target effectively. A straight wall is a much smaller target than the complex faces of a bastion. So where did the defensive fire come from? This is the clever part. Protruding from the main defensive ditch were separate, heavily protected structures called caponiers. Think of them as concrete bunkers built right into the ditch. These caponiers were bristling with cannons and guns, and their job was to sweep the ditch clean with fire, from one end to the other. Any attacker who managed to get into the main ditch would be walking into a fatal wall of lead and iron. This system was a massive improvement. The main fortress guns could focus entirely on long-range fire, dueling with the enemy siege artillery, while the caponiers handled the close-in defense of the ditches. This separation of duties was incredibly effective. Furthermore, the polygonal fort's design incorporated another feature called the tenaille system. This was a series of low, zigzagging outer walls and ditches built in front of the main wall. It looked like a complicated maze of earth and stone. This wasn't just for show. This crumple zone was designed to break up and slow down an attacking force. Each wall had to be breached, each ditch crossed, all while under fire from the main ramparts. It forced the enemy to expend huge amounts of time, energy, and manpower just to get to the primary defenses. The result was a fortress that was far more resilient to Vauban's siege techniques. The straight walls were harder to knock down, the caponiers made the ditches a death trap, and the complex outworks made the slow, methodical approach of digging trenches a nightmare. There were no more convenient blind spots for sappers to hide in. Every inch of ground was covered by fire from somewhere. This new style of fortress was pioneered by engineers like the Frenchman Marc-René de Montalembert, and later perfected by the Prussians. By the mid-19th century, the polygonal system had become the standard for new fortifications across Europe. Cities were encircled by massive rings of these powerful, scientifically designed forts. This era represents a fascinating chapter in the eternal arms race between offense and defense. Just as the sword led to the shield, and the cannon led to the star fort, the refined art of siegecraft led directly to the polygonal fortress. Each new weapon or tactic from the attacker forced the defender to innovate, to think differently, and to build smarter. Of course, this cycle didn't stop there. The mid-19th century saw the development of rifled artillery, which was far more accurate and powerful than the old smoothbore cannons. Then came high-explosive shells, which could shatter masonry and earthworks with terrifying ease. Once again, the fortresses that were considered state-of-the-art became vulnerable. The mighty polygonal forts, once thought impregnable, would themselves become relics of a bygone era, leading to the deep concrete and steel bunkers of the world wars. But for a glorious period in the 18th and 19th centuries, the polygonal fortress was the undisputed king of defense, a testament to human ingenuity in the face of destruction. It was a direct response to a strategic problem, a perfect example of how form follows function, even on the battlefield. So next time you see an old fort, take a closer look at its shape. Is it a star, with elegant, pointed bastions, or is it a simpler, more brutal-looking polygon? Each shape tells a story of siege and defense, of cannons and engineering, and of the constant, bloody struggle for the upper hand. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into military history. If you found this interesting, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more content, and maybe let me know in the comments what other historical topics you'd like to see covered. See you next time.